Welcome to Reclaim the Light, a symposium on domestic violence. If I could have all the elected officials in the room stand, please, for a moment. Thank you so much for what you all do for the community here and in Crawford, Peach counties as well. We appreciate you all so much and thank you for being here today. So, domestic violence is a national issue in which that often leads to the most serious crimes as well as the most difficult crimes to prosecute because they happen usually within the sanctity of a home and there are very few witnesses, if any. So domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one partner against another to maintain power and control over the other. On average, 20 people in the United States are physically abused by an intimate partner every minute. Most people, men or women, experience domestic violence usually between the ages of 18 and 24. However, there are studies that show it happens as young as the age of 11 between both sexes. And this is for incidents of domestic violence that are reported. As we know, all incidents of domestic violence are not typically reported. And domestic violence is not just a national issue, it is an issue here in Georgia. Between 2018 and 2021, there were 171 reported incidents of family violence, 171,596 reported incidents of domestic violence. 37.4% of Georgia women and 30.4% of Georgia men have experienced stalking, intimate partner violence in their lifetime. In 2022, there were 193 known domestic violence fatalities in the state of Georgia. And Georgia ranks 4th in this country for murder-suicide rates. Domestic violence is also an issue here in Bibb County. And our office has taken a stance to do what we can to end domestic violence. In 2019, 60 family violence cases were closed in the DA's office. We're going to skip over 2020. As we all know, our court systems weren't running the way that they should have due to the pandemic. However, in 2021, 67 family violence cases were closed in the DA's office. Last year in 2022, 81 family violence cases were closed in our office. DA Howard started the domestic violence unit January 1st of this year, in which we have a designated prosecutor and a designated team that works solely on domestic violence cases. I am that domestic violence prosecutor, and I would like to proudly tell y'all that as of yesterday, our office has closed 92 cases on family violence specifically. This is something that DA Howard is dedicated to helping and getting our victims the justice that they deserve, no matter how small the justice might be or how great it might be. This is something that she is passionate about, and it's something that our office greatly appreciates her for starting, and I hope the community feels the same way. Next up, we will have Dawn Baskin to introduce our first speaker. Thank you.
My name is Dawn Baskin. I'm a senior assistant district attorney here with DA Howard, and I am one of the dedicated prosecutors for homicides in Bibb County. I also do trials outside of Bibb County, including Peach County. Unfortunately, those numbers that Amber just told you about don't include the homicides. So the problem is even greater than that. But I want to talk to you about a situation that I had the honor of attempting to get some measure of justice. In the evening hours of March 31st, 2020, a hysterical 911 call was received by the Bibb County Sheriff's Office. Jamila French can be heard on the recording calling out for her mother. She is frantically directing law enforcement to 571 Moreland Avenue. She tells 911 that she has been violently assaulted by her partner, Caesar Crockett. She's 30 years of age at the time. He had begun to beat her and choke her in a bathroom in the home. His reason, she wasn't paying him enough attention. Her mother, Janet Samuels, 67 years of age at the time, heard her daughter's screams, ran to the bathroom, and attempted to pull Caesar Crockett off of her daughter. As Jamila told 911 that Caesar, after being pulled off of her, got a gun, aimed it at Jamila. Her mother yelled for her to run. The last thing that Jamila saw as she ran out of the house at the direction of her mother was her mother being shot. Unknown to Jamila, she ran through the night in an attempt to get help. Her stepfather, James Samuel, who was 69 years of age, heard the commotion and had started to come from the bathroom at the other side of the house. Janet Samuels had been running away after having been shot. Caesar Crockett stopped chasing Janet long enough to gun down James Samuel in the small confines of the bathroom. In a bedroom across the house, DeShasta Childs, who was 47 years of age at the time and sister to Jamila, was attempting to protect the 2-year-old son of Jamila from the carnage. The evidence showed that Caesar Crockett had violently broke down the locked door of DeShasta's bedroom. We know that King Crockett, the child, had often stayed in DeShasta's room while his mother was working in the house. So the evidence showed that DeShasta had locked the door to protect the child. After Caesar broke down the door, we believe the evidence showed that DeShasta tried to flee the house with the child, but he gunned her down as well. King Crockett, 2 years of age, was ripped from his aunt and taken into the night by Caesar Crockett. With no car seat and no provisions, Crockett drove for hours through South Georgia and into Florida.
Breaking news tonight, 3 people in the same family were shot to death in a Macon home. That's according to Coroner Leon Jones. Sabrina Burse is live from the scene on Moreland Avenue. Sabrina, what do we know so far?
Well, Lori, around 9:30 tonight, Macon-Bibb Coroner Leon Jones says 3 people were found shot to death in a home at 571 Moreland Avenue. If you take a look behind me, it is a very active scene. Just a few moments ago, we spoke with Sheriff David Davis. He says they are looking for a suspect named Caesar Crockett. He is 29 years old. They say he is with a 2-year-old child. They are looking for a black Pontiac or Mitsubishi. Now, Macon-Bibb Coroner Leon Jones says the 3 victims who were found dead inside of the home are James Samuel, age 69, his wife, Janet Samuel, age 67, and their daughter, Lashista Childs, age 47. Like I said, they were all found dead inside of the home. Macon-Bibb Coroner Leon Jones says it's going to be an extremely extensive investigation. Law enforcement will be out here probably all night, and he said the entire coroner's office is also out here. Like I said, Sheriff David Davis says they are looking for a suspect right now. That's all the information we have for you right now, live in Macon. Sabrina Burse, 13 WMAZ News.
Thanks so much, Sabrina, for the update. And we'll continue to update this with the information that we have on 13WMAZ.com.
24 hours later, in
Florida Highway Patrol, and it reads as follows. The suspect involved in the Amber Alert issued from Georgia earlier today was spotted near I-75 and Fowler Avenue. A pursuit soon ensued that led to I-4. Florida Highway Patrol, troopers, and Tampa police units worked together to attempt to stop the suspect as he fled at speeds of 120 miles per hour east and westbound along I-4. While exiting eastbound I-4 at I-75, the suspect crashed on the exit ramp. The child was recovered safely, and currently the suspect remains inside the vehicle armed in a standoff with troopers and police. The area should be avoided at this time. Additional details will be released as soon as they become available.
7 hours later, Caesar Crockett finally surrendered. He was brought back to Georgia, arrested, indicted, and tried. During the closing argument, I used this slide, that justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. On May 18, 2023, a 12-person jury was outraged, and Caesar Crockett was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 3 life sentences without parole, followed by another life sentence plus 20 years. I have the honor of introducing you to a survivor, a woman who suffered physical abuse at the hands of a partner, a woman who witnessed her mother shot, a woman whose family was annihilated, a woman who did not know whether her small child was alive or dead for nearly 24 hours. A survivor who sat in court and faced true evil. Jamila French is a daughter, a sister, a mother, and a survivor.
Good morning. Honestly, domestic violence is something I never really thought about until it happened to me. I was in a relationship for about 5 years. During that time, I thought, because of TV, that domestic violence was portrayed by physical abuse, but it's way more than that. It's mental and verbal abuse as well. So during that 5 years, that is what I endured. The comparison that he would do towards my family, his dynamic, his lifestyle, everything did not make any sense whatsoever. But whenever I would challenge that, it came off as if I was being misunderstanding, plotting against him, and also lying, making things harder for him, when that was never the case. We lived together for about 4 of those 5 years. Within that time, I was paying most of the bills. He was utilizing my vehicle to go to jobs and other places. But everything was always made as if I was the one making it hard for him. I realized that it was not what I was doing. It's that jealousy and hate that he had within himself. He could not stand to see someone thrive or do without him being there. So that's when he set out on a personal mission to destroy not only me, but my family. Unfortunately, we lost a lot during that time. 3 strong individuals of my family, the foundation of my family, through God, church, family health, and healing, was taken on that one day. But don't get me wrong, he tried to take me out too. One of the shots that he fired at me would have been a kill shot. It's only through by God that I'm standing here today. My son was in that car, and as the DA presented the case in court, that was my first time seeing the footage for myself of my baby being in a vehicle with this monster driving 120 miles an hour, about to wreck or collide with other individuals on that same highway. He would have done more damage to not only me, but those other individuals as well. But it's only through by God that they remained safe. My baby made it out safe. Even though I was hurt, eyes swollen, crying, everything, it brought me joy to hear that my baby was safe without a scratch or a bruise upon him. The police instantly took me down to Florida to reunite with my son. Some of the things that I did not recognize at that time was how much worse it could get. And indeed it did. He made threats upon himself of committing suicide. I took it lightly. He made threats upon me as far as not wanting me to wear wigs or get dolled up, what he would do. I took it lightly because he never physically abused me. So I thought, it ain't gonna be nothing. He's not gonna do anything. I have a family that will take him down, and me, myself, I tend to be a fighter. So I've learned that you have to really look at what people say along with their actions that speak volumes. Because what someone may say this one day, it may not happen that particular day, but indeed it's coming from their heart. When someone is making threats upon you and your family, it is indeed a threat that they may not today carry out. It may be another day. That may be more horrific than what it comes off at that point, at that time. He could have fled without harming my family. But all the evidence showed that he was intended and set out to destroy me and my family, to leave us broken, hurt, and without a doubt scattering to rebuild a future. My mother and I had different conversations, and she would ask me, why was I with him? Why he's not doing more to try to help? I found out that it was a cover-up. It was more things that he could not do based on his past, the reason why he wasn't putting forth the effort. Do I honestly think he would have left without causing so much harm? No. We've talked about co-parenting before, but each time he had the opportunity to leave, he would come back. He made up excuses. He wanted to stay around, not my family, but me. Tore me down in every type of way. Discouraged me from going to school, discouraged me from pursuing management opportunities at other job locations, discouraged me from even simply being a mother. Everything that I was doing wrong in his eyes, he capitalized on it to make me feel more insecure about myself, about life, about what to do from one moment to the next. Anyone that's dealing with that type of abuse in any way, I plead that you go in, at least let someone know. I had one friend and my niece who I talked to almost every day. They knew about it. One thing I thank God for is them, because in the times that this man had opportunity to harm me by myself, he didn't know that they was around. So that did not give him the opportunity to do anything. I had got approved for an apartment. He had the opportunity to harm me at the storage facility when no cameras were working. my best friend showed up to help me unload the stuff. My niece, I told her about another incident where he was being very hostile with me. She told me to come to her house. If it had not been for those other two angels that were with me, God only knows where I would be, how long it would possibly take for anyone to find me, what he would have done to my family without me being there. So I thank God for that. The hard part about accepting some of these realities is the fact that we cannot change it. A person is who they are. If they don't see life or love in their own eyes, nothing we can do can change that. I try to make up excuses and give a reason as to why he may feel the way he feel, act the way he act. Maybe I can help him. Maybe I can guide him towards this. That did not help. None of what I did helped because that was his mindset. While coping and crying out to God during the process after the trauma, I'm learning about love, life, and coping with change and forgiveness. I'm learning the true meaning of love, the actions, and speaking with intentions. If someone is not willing to bring that type of energy or that mindset to the table, they are not worth your time. I'm learning about life, its meaning, living for self but not being selfish, and finding purpose. Everyone has a purpose, and it's our job to discover it for ourselves. Not to be put in situations where another individual come into our lives and destroy that because they don't see their purpose, their greatness, the things that they can bring to make them feel more alive for the positive. Coping with change and taking time to experience every single emotion, accepting the unchangeable, and starting over, sometimes incorporating new traditions. Coping with change also goes hand in hand with domestic situations or relationships. We may not want to walk out of that relationship due to obligation or feeling like we owe another person something, but you owe more to yourself, to your life. So we have to put in the work to better ourselves, to make it to where so it won't get worse. No one should have to experience losing themselves or their families, having a child ripped away from them, having to go on a life-changing journey feeling like they failed because of the actions of another individual. Forgiveness of oneself, situation, and the people. The people one, that's much harder because you have to find forgiveness within yourself first, situation, but forgiving the other individuals, the other parties involved, that take work. It does not happen overnight. But within that, you will definitely come out brighter with a new outlook on life and boundaries that you're not willing to adjust or change for no one because you will know yourself. Every person matters and have something to live for, no matter Every person matters and has something to live for. No one should feel like they have to suffer in silence dealing with a domestic violence situation. Isolation is the worst thing to do whenever dealing with trauma. Therefore, always speaking with someone on the issues so it can be addressed, documented, and witnessed to prevent homicides. Thank you.
So many times when we think of domestic violence, we think of the immediate victim. We don't think about the people who are possibly hiding in their rooms or actually witnessing the violence occur. But studies show countless times there are children in the home who either visibly see what's occurring or hear what's happening. About 10 million children witness domestic violence annually in this country. Male children who witness their fathers abuse their mothers are 3 times more likely to become abusive to their future partners. Female children who witness their fathers abuse their mothers are twice as likely to become involved in abusive relationships themselves. Another program that DA Howard has initiated since she became the district attorney of the Macon Judicial Circuit is the RISE initiative. What the RISE program does is we provide services to children who are either victims of crimes themselves or the children of people who are victims or even the children of people who are offenders, because we realize that life situations should not continuously pull you down just because that is what you were brought into. So what she has established is a program that provides that provides services such as counseling, tutoring, mentors. She takes them to events such as football games, soccer games, baseball games to give them experiences that they might not have otherwise had. And here to speak a little bit more about that program is our RISE director, Jeremy Rains.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeremy Rains, and I'm the director of the RISE initiative at the District Attorney's Office. Our Honorable District Attorney Anita Howard created this initiative in 2022, and since the beginning of this initiative, it has been a wonderful safe haven for at-risk youth who face trials and tribulations throughout their daily life, including domestic violence. Domestic violence is defined as violent or aggressive behavior within the home, typically involving the violent abuse of a spouse or a partner. While many of us are focused on 2 partners who engage in the domestic violence, we almost forget about the children who witness domestic violence and are affected tremendously. We must remember that domestic violence is not only physical, but can cause emotional and psychological harm as well. I'm here today to shed light on the negative outcomes that affect our children when they experience domestic violence. Children who witness domestic violence often experience a wide range of emotional and psychological effects, which can have profound and lasting impacts on their well-being. For example, some effects are fear and anxiety, social isolation, emotional distress, difficulty in school, low self-esteem, and above all, trauma. It's important to note that the impact of witnessing domestic violence can vary from one child to another, depending on their age, the frequency and severity of violence, and the presence of a supportive network. Recognizing these effects is crucial for providing the necessary support and intervention to help children cope with and heal from the traumatic experiences. If not treated in their childhood, it can extend to adulthood and make a turn for the worse. It can lead to depression, anxiety, PTSD, substance abuse, and toxic relationships. And when I say toxic relationships, I mean relationships that have difficulty in trusting each other, attachment issues, and aggressive behavior, which will lead to domestic violence. As you can see, we have to break the cycle early if we want to limit and decrease the rate of domestic violence. Two studies that were shocking to me and drives me to push the RISE initiative more and more for children who we just haven't found yet were studies from the CDC and NCCP, which is the National Center for Children in Poverty. According to the CDC, children exposed to domestic violence may have difficulties concentrating, leading to lower academic performance, which will lead them to drop out. The National Center for Children in Poverty reports that children exposed to domestic violence have an increased risk of experiencing poverty due to disruption of family stability and economic instability, which will lead to homelessness. As you can see with these reports, domestic violence causes grave danger for children and will lead them to a world with no hope and motivation. This is why the acronym is RISE, is Restore Inspiration by Success in Education. Because without implementing education in their life, it can lead to an unstable environment. Again, that's why we must break the cycle today. Let's protect our children. Let's encourage them to have healthy and stable relationships. Let's educate and support our children and adults to allow them to heal the emotional scars of domestic violence. Let's raise awareness like we're doing today. Overall, let's keep our community safe, especially for our children in this world. To conclude, I just want to encourage the community and the special people in this room today to make efforts to combat against domestic violence, providing assistance for our youth to programs like the RISE initiatives, and a lot more services that is in Macon. Overall, we want to mitigate these challenges that they endure because one day these children will grow up to become our future leaders, and thank the services that strive for them to be the best they can be. Thank you.
So we're a little bit ahead of schedule, but we are just about ready to start serving you lunch. And I have the great pleasure of bringing up my victim advocate, I'm sorry, Miss Lisa. But I would personally like to say one of the best victim advocates in our office, mainly because she is mine. I handle the domestic violence cases, so those are the cases she touches as well. And she has great experience in handling these cases. So if Ms. Whitehead would come up to say grace for our lunch, please.
Good morning. That's a long walk, y'all. Can we all bow for a word of prayer? Father God, we come to you right now, God, saying thank you. Thank you, God, because you are our protector. God, you are our avenger. You are our healer, God. Lord, you know all and you see all, God. Everything that has happened on here today, we thank you for bringing us all together, God, to be on one accord. We come from various walks of life. We come from prosecution. We come from victim advocacy. We come from the victim, but we come from the survivor. Lord, we thank you for bringing us here today. Lord, we come, God, to worship you, praise and uplift your name because it's all about you. We thank you on today, God, because you have prepared this program, God. Lord, you have given the visionary, God, this vision to let everyone know, God, that you will be the one to take care of all of these situations. You will be the one, God, to be victorious over all that has happened to the ones, God, that are facing these situations. But we come on today, God, Lord, to say thank you, God. Lord, if we had a lot of tongues, we still couldn't say it enough. But we do say thank you. But right now, God, we bless you for blessing us. We thank you, God, for giving us this food on today, God, for the nourishment of our bodies. We thank you, God, for providing the funds for this food. We thank you for giving the one, God, that has said that we are going to do this on today. We thank you, God, for D.A. Howard, God. Lord, for providing this venue, God. Lord, for bringing us all together in one place. So we just ask you right now, God, to just give us this food, God. Don't let it harm our bodies, God. Lord, let it be for nourishment and the provision. We thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
So lunch is still not quite ready yet, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce our moderator, who's then going to introduce our panelists that are going to be answering some questions for y'all this morning. So we have the esteemed pleasure of having Ms. Tamika Daniels as our moderator. She is the Deputy Director of Georgia Legal Services Program, where she supervises the managing attorneys in the program's 9 regional offices. She previously served as the managing attorney for the Macon Regional Office of the Georgia Legal Services Program. Mrs. Daniels is a 1997 graduate of Clark Atlanta University. She is a 2002 graduate of Mercer University School of Law. Ms. Daniels has been practicing law in Georgia with Georgia Legal Services since 2002, where she primarily handled family law, housing, elder law, as well as family violence cases for low-income Georgians. Mrs. Daniels has conducted numerous trainings on domestic violence issues throughout the state, training legal advocates, attorneys, law enforcement officials, and judges on the issues of domestic violence. In 2014, she received the Domestic Violence Task Force Member of the Year Award from the Georgia Commission on Family Violence. In 2020, Mrs. Daniels was appointed by Governor Brian Kemp to serve on the Georgia Commission of Family Violence. In addition to her legal work, Mrs. Daniels is a member of the Sigma Epsilon Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She is a member of the Macon Bar Association. She is the past president of the Houston County Bar Association. She is a member of the Georgia Association for Black Women Attorneys. She is the immediate past president of the Boodle Inn Court and member of the Georgia Association for Women Attorneys. She is also a member of the Macon chapter of the Links Incorporated. She is an active member of Fellowship Bible Baptist Church. She is married to Willie L. Daniel Jr., and they have a 14-year-old daughter named Carrington.
Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me? No. Testing, 1, 2. Testing. Testing. Okay, thank you so much. Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here. What Amber forgot to mention is that she's one of my babies from the law school, and she makes me feel really old sitting here watching how she has progressed through her career. I'm extremely proud of her and expect great things from her going forward. I want to have an opportunity to introduce my esteemed panelists to you today, and I'm excited, saddened, but excited that we are here to have the conversation. The fact that you are here today shows that you understand the importance of domestic violence, and so we're going to jump right into it. Next to me, I have Amanda Grimsley. Ms. Grimsley was a member of the security forces in the Air Force for 8 years before medically retiring and becoming a 911 dispatcher. She's currently the victim advocate for the Bibb County Sheriff's Office, a position that she has held for a little over a year. She handles victim services for all violent crimes, which include domestic violence cases. Thank you for being here, Amanda. Up next, we have Ms. Sarah Shank. She works for Crisis Line and Safe House as the director of One Safe Place Macon, one of Georgia's first family justice centers, which will be opening in 2024. Stay tuned. She is passionate about community transformation through addressing big issues with big solutions. Sarah has over 17 years of experience in community relations, fundraising, strategic planning, and project implementation. Prior to joining One Safe Place Macon, Sarah worked at Mercer University School of Medicine in the areas of student research and career counseling, and right here at Wesleyan College, leading the institution's quality enhancement plan. Sarah is a member of Career Women's Network of Macon, a Leadership Macon Class 2022 alumni, and a Volunteer Wish grantor for the Make-A-Wish Foundation of Georgia. Thank you, Sarah. Up next, we have Ms. Jamie Borman. She is the Deputy Director for Crisis Line and Safe House of Central Georgia. During her 17 years with the Crisis Line and Safe House, Jamie has facilitated trainings for various audiences, including DFACs, law enforcement, advocates, prosecutors, and faith leaders. She is a current board member for the Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence and a past chair of the Central Georgia Council on Family Violence. Ms. Borman was appointed to the Georgia Commission on Family Violence by Governor Kemp in October 2023 and was the 2016 recipient of the In the Trenches Award from the Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence, in part for her work to expand services to victims in rural communities of Central Georgia. She obtained a Bachelor's of Arts in Sociology from Mercer University and a Master of Science in Criminal Justice from the University of Cincinnati. I'm glad to have you, Jamie. Up next, we have Bonnie Carlson. Ms. Carlson is an assistant professor at Mercer University School of Law, where she teaches family law, law of lawyering, and poverty law, and has created and directs the Domestic Violence Clinic. She came to Mercer from Georgetown University Law Center, where she was a clinical teaching fellow in the Domestic Violence Clinic. Prior to working at Georgetown, Ms. Carlson was a training and technical assistant staff attorney with the American Bar Association Commission on Domestic and Sexual Violence. She was formerly a family law staff attorney for the Alexandria Office of Legal Services of Northern Virginia for 4 years, representing victims of domestic violence. Upon her graduation from the George Washington University Law School, Ms. Carlson was awarded the National Association of Women Lawyers Outstanding Law Graduate for her work with domestic violence victims, as well as her academic success. Bonnie grew up in Arlington, Virginia, and earned a Bachelor's of Arts in American Studies and Women's Studies from the University of Virginia. Welcome, Bonnie. And last but not least, William Keys. Mr. Keys currently serves as the Deputy Criminal Chief of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Georgia. He joined the office as a federal prosecutor in 2018. He has prosecuted a broad range of federal criminal cases to include drug trafficking organizations, violent crime, and offenses related to terrorism. Before joining the office, he was on active duty in the U.S. Army, prosecuting members of Al-Qaeda in military commissions in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. He began his legal career at a firm in Atlanta and holds 4 degrees from the University of Georgia, which include his law degree, a master's degree, and 2 undergraduate degrees. In addition to his duties with the office, Mr. Keys serves as the U.S. Army Reserve's Civil Affairs and Psychological Operations Command as a judge advocate. Welcome, Mr. Keys. So let's give a round of applause for this panel that you're going to hear from. Please continue to enjoy your meals. We don't want you to stop eating. We're just going to go ahead and start the conversation and hope that you will join in as well. So we're going to just kind of freewheel these questions. I'm going to ask a few questions, and any of our panelists can feel free to jump in. But I'm throwing this first question specifically to Jamie because I've known her the longest, and I can do that. 17 years of friendship and working together, we can do this. Jamie, can you give us a working definition? We've heard a lot about domestic violence, snippets here and there since we've been in this room this morning. But can you give us a working definition of what domestic violence is? And can you answer the question, is this something that only affects women?
Thank you. So we saw on the PowerPoint early on in the presentation that domestic violence, the broad definition, is that it is a pattern of behaviors used by one partner to gain and maintain power and control over the other partner. And I think that we focus a lot as society on physical violence. But when you're talking about the dynamics in an abusive relationship, it is often not physical. And so it's really important to focus on that power and control. And I heard a presentation years ago, and I wish I knew who said it, but someone said that when you're looking at a domestic violence situation, whose world is getting smaller? So who in the relationship is not allowed to talk to their friends, is not allowed to see their family, is not allowed to wear what they want to wear? That's a really good indicator that a relationship may be abusive. And that doesn't mean that it's always physically violent, but it can be an indicator that there is abuse going on. And so, again, it's about that power and control and not necessarily always about physical violence.
So for any of our panelists, is this a situation where you have represented or you've seen male victims of domestic violence, or is this something that primarily is a gender-specific crime?
I forgot the second part of your
It's
question
okay.
when I was
I got
answering.
you.
So, but yes, so domestic violence can certainly happen to anyone. It can happen to men. It can happen to women. Statistically speaking, we know that about 85% of victims of domestic violence are female, but it certainly can happen to men in relationships.
And so as we speak about the victim or the survivor in this conversation, we will historically refer to her as she, because the statistics show that it is more common among females. But there are male victims, often the silent victims, because they may not always report. And there are several reasons why that doesn't come out: fear, embarrassment, but we want to acknowledge that males can be victims of domestic violence as well. As a community member, what are some signs that indicate that my friend could be a victim of domestic violence? I'd like to hear from each of you on this one.
Well, I think kind of like what Jamie is saying, just seeing someone who kind of that world seems to be getting smaller. Maybe there's a lot of distance from friends, distance from family members, changes in the way their routine or kind of their norm that you know of them. I think it's important also that should a friend or somebody you know, church member, whoever, indicate something like that to you, it takes a lot for somebody to say that, even if they're beating around the bush and they don't flat out say, I am in a domestic violence relationship. There's things that you would pick up on. And I think the most important thing to remember, should you be somebody trusted that somebody shares with you, is to believe what they're saying. Don't doubt it, don't discount it, don't try to minimize it. You know, that I hear you and I believe you, and listening to them. That may not mean that they're in a place ready to get the help that they might eventually need or need at that moment. But I think we heard that earlier, how important friends are, how important those safe, trusted people can be in those relationships.
I can say, speaking for law enforcement, we've talked about patterns as part of the definition, and what we often see from law enforcement and what makes this crime so tough to prosecute is you may have a pattern of domestic violence, but these are incredibly complex and challenging crimes to prosecute. Our office isn't usually the front line on domestic violence. It's usually going to be the DA's office or the solicitor's office that is prosecuting the misdemeanor crime of domestic violence or the criminal trespass or whatever that might be. But the pattern is, you'll see a pattern of arrest or a pattern of victims coming forward and making reports. Those can be very hard to turn into convictions. And so, again, kind of from the law enforcement perspective, just because those aren't convictions, we take that pattern really seriously, because if there's smoke, there's fire. And just because those 8 arrests didn't turn into a conviction, when I'm looking at I want to prosecute the most violent members of our community, and I see those 8 arrests, well, that's pretty telling to me. I can't hold that against them necessarily in court. It's not adjudicated, but common sense tells us if 3 women have reported 8 incidences, then if I can prosecute that individual on, let's say, something totally separate, let's say they have a bag of meth or a gun or something like that, well, we're going to lean forward on that case, because it may be that removing that person from society is really what's best for everyone, and we just have to find another avenue if the domestic violence, we can't directly prosecute it.
And I want to just say one thing. So domestic violence is largely underreported. We hear about domestic violence when it becomes physical violence, but we don't necessarily talk about all the other things that are going on. But when we as support systems, we as friends or family, hear someone expressing that they're in a violent or abusive relationship, they may be talking about things like, well, he didn't want me to come to this today because he thought that it would, he didn't want me to see y'all. Or he didn't want me to wear this outfit that I bought for my birthday. Or he doesn't let me drive the car except to church on Sundays. Those kinds of things that aren't ringing the bells of, oh my gosh, he's being violent to her, are still sort of hallmarks that we should be looking for as caretakers, loved ones, friends, to see that our friends are in danger potentially. And I think one of the things that's really important is sometimes we, as that touch point, may know both parties. And it's really important that we don't go to that other party and disclose that we know, because you may put that victim in more danger. So it's important to ask the victim, what is it that you want me to do with this information? How can I support you? And if she says, I don't want him to know I told you, it's really important for their safety that we don't disclose that information.
I think another sign is if you see a loved one or community member who you think is being surveilled by a loved one. So if you've got a friend who tells you that their boyfriend is checking their phone or looking through their text messages or call logs or emails or anything like that, that's another common indicator and a sign of extreme jealousy that could lead to some type of other further violence. And especially with all of the technology that we have today, it goes well beyond just phone surveillance. And we've got folks who are putting GPS monitors behind car tires so that they can track where their intimate partners go, and putting recording devices inside the house and recording conversations, filming conversations. So if you've got a friend or a loved one who feels like they're being watched or their privacy is being invaded, that might be another sign.
I think one that I see the most, and it really hits on the power and control, and Jamie, you and I have spoke about this actually quite a few times, is the victim that's at home and they want to go back to work, but their offender prevents them from bettering themselves, so they have to rely on their offender, so they cannot stand on their own 2 feet. It's the person who has to get the money from their offender, or I have to ask him for this money, or he's not giving me my allowance this week, or he says I can't go back to school to get my degree. They want you to stay in that position where you rely on them, where they are your savior as the power and control, for you to not have your own footing, to rely on yourself and lead them.
And thank you for pointing out the non-physical signs of domestic violence, because those are the harder to recognize. I can't tell you how many times I've represented victims in court that say, well, I'm not a victim of domestic violence. He never hit me. He just slapped me once. He just pushed me. And that's shocking for some of us at the table, but especially the young people that I talk with in my teen dating violence world, they don't understand what domestic violence means. So it's important to name it so that we know what we're talking about. So now that we recognize the signs of domestic violence, and all of us are experts now in doing that, what can I do to help my friend if I find out, I do think something's going on? Each of you, just tell me, what are some things that I can do to help her?
I think being that support system and following their lead, asking them what they need for their support, and never pushing them to do something that they don't want to do. Statistically, they're going to handle their situation and leave their situation when they are ready. And so being that support system, letting them know that they always have someone that they can call and they can turn to, and someone who truly believes them, is a huge game changer, because when you're isolated and that person has separated you from everybody that you feel safe with, you feel like you can't go anywhere. You feel like your situation can't change. So just letting your friend know that you support them and you believe them, and no matter what they want to do, you're right there with them.
I think also educating ourselves on just the resources that we do have in the community, because we're really fortunate to have an organization like Crisis Line that's such a strong anti-domestic violence organization. So just being aware of the services that they provide, the 24-hour hotline, counseling services, sexual assault exams, advocacy in court, and then I would probably just give someone Jamie's personal cell phone number.
I think to thank you for the plug. To go with what Amanda was saying, I do want to say that what I hear sometimes from people who are calling our hotline and they're saying, I know this person who's experiencing domestic violence, and I'm really frustrated because I got them out, I put them in a hotel, and now they're back. And so I think it's really important for everyone to know that on average, a victim of domestic violence will leave and return to that relationship 7 times before leaving for good. Because it is not as simple as walking out the door and never coming back. There are tons of barriers that someone may face. There are reasons that they may return. And also, domestic violence is not happening in a vacuum. It's not the only thing happening in that relationship. There are moments of caring and love and fun and vacations with family. Like, there are things happening in that relationship that make it feel normal at times. And so it is not as simple for that victim as walking out the door. One of the things about crisis line and safe house and hotlines in general is that even if someone is not ready to make a decision, if they're not ready to leave yet, they can call a hotline. They can call crisis line and safe house or some other hotline in their community and say, I don't even want to tell you my name, but I think I might be experiencing domestic violence. What can I do? And we will tell them their options. We'll answer their questions. We'll provide them with support. They'll have a point of contact in a month if they are ready to leave, to talk through what those options are again. And our advocates are also trained to provide safety planning. So the most dangerous time for victims is when they are making plans to leave or have left a violent relationship. And so our advocates are able to talk through what leaving looks like. Where will you go? Does the person that you're leaving know where that person lives? Do they have access to weapons? Have they ever strangled you? All of these things are indicators of severe violence or potential for homicide. And so those are things that we talk through with the people that call our hotline. So it's really important to know those resources that you can connect folks with, because you don't have to know everything, but there are people that do and can help someone process the next steps as they're making those decisions.
I think all the resources that the other panel members mentioned are so important because, again, from a prosecution focus, any prosecutor who's going to try and charge and successfully prosecute one of these crimes understands that no one wants to be the victim. However, the case is built upon the victim. And if the victim isn't comfortable with coming forward, everyone understands that. They're the one who's suffering. But if the ultimate goal and if what success looks like is successful prosecution of that individual, it's all these resources, it's the community, it's the family members, it's the loved ones, whatever it might be, who needs to be there for them, support them, help them report, be with them through the process. Because, as hard as it is, I can't imagine being a victim of domestic violence. Well, then testifying in court in front of the person who, did that to you would be terrifying. And again, prosecutors understand that, and that's why the resources are important.
Well, and I think it's also, if somebody's disclosing to you or talking to you, or like I said, you're that trustworthy person they're coming to, no one is asking you to play amateur social worker. No one is asking you to try to figure out what to do, how to do it, how to get help, how to safety plan for them. Exactly to what they're saying, we have those resources on our community. The best thing that you can do as a friend, as a loved one, is listen. I believe you. What would you like me to do? What do you want to do next? Would you like my help with something? Can I help you report it? Do you want to report it? Here's the crisis line and safe house hotline. If you're ready to call, would you like me to do it with you? There's things like that that you can do. But there's a lot of times our victims, our community members don't know the laundry list of resources that are available. And it can be really overwhelming. So sometimes the best thing that you can do is help them, encourage them, and be with them. And when they're ready, help them get that foot in the door for the next right step, which may be either reporting it, it may be calling the hotline, but you don't feel like you have to play amateur social worker. The other thing I would say is don't say, well, what did you do? What did you do? That victim blaming starts to immediately back you off as a safe, trustworthy person. It's that I believe you. What can I do? I'm here with you. Now and later. When you're ready, I'm here with you. So I think that's important too. I think sometimes our gut instinct is to want to know both sides of the story and figure out, no, the best thing you can do is I hear you. I believe you. So.
Okay, William, I'm going to come back to you and then to Amanda for this question. What's the response from law enforcement and the courts in a situation where there's domestic violence?
So I think, kind of frontline is going to be the sheriff's office and deputies and getting the call and law enforcement responding to the domestic incident, whatever it might be. And then that going through the court system. As far as our office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, as I mentioned before, we're not going to be directly prosecuting those crimes just because our statutes don't necessarily handle those, but we're working in close coordination with the Solicitor's Office and with the DA's office, but that touches every part of what we do too. So from our charging investigation we do, we're looking for domestic violence. It often comes up as part of the crime that we are prosecuting. And that's something, when I get to sentencing, I want that judge to understand he was committing all of these crimes. And by the way, look at what he was doing to his family members. And it continues all the way through the case. It's so common after the individual has served their prison sentence and then they're back out, if they have a criminal history and a pattern of this, then we hear from the probation officer on the back end, they're doing these things again, and it's really up to law enforcement to be thorough, but to pay attention. Again, it's harder to detect. The other panel members are going to get, the phone call, and they're working hands-on. But although it's a little harder for us to detect, it's more important for it to be a community response and for these people to be reported, like I talked about earlier.
So for our deputies, when they respond to a domestic call, it is required for them that if there is any allegations of physical violence, that they're to report it and write up a report so that we can create that track history, even if there isn't enough to prosecute at the time, or the victim does not want to prosecute at the time, if there's not enough physical evidence for the arrest at the moment. It creates that track record that we can keep up with. It gets their foot in the door to where their name then makes it to my desk. We make contact, we push them to the crisis line and safe house, we offer them all different kind of resources. And we're currently right now, the brochure pamphlet that goes out to all the victims on calls, we are in the process of changing it with better information for victims, more up-to-date phone numbers, more resources, and tips for them inside of that, so they can feel a little bit more that people are listening to them, even if there can't be something done at that exact moment. It gets them in touch with more people.
Thank you. As we're bringing this panel to a close, I want to give Sarah an opportunity to speak about an exciting initiative that's coming to the Middle Georgia community that we want you all to really get excited about as well.
Well, and some of you are faces who have heard me talk about this before, but what we're really excited about here in Macon is we are bringing a family justice center to our community. For those of y'all who don't know, a family justice center is a best practice throughout the country for serving victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and other violent crimes of that nature. There's over 100 family justice centers in the country, but there are none in Georgia. And in Macon, we will be one of the first 3 opening up in our state, along with Marietta and Waycross. This initiative is led by Crisis Line and Safe House, but there's over 20 agencies that serve victims or support our community that are coming together on this. So basically what a family justice center does, you've heard, you see, you know that we have a lot of wonderful resources in our community. But there's still a lot of barriers to getting the help that you need. A lot of times the burden can be on the victim to navigate that, to figure out, who do I call? Where do I go? How do I get there? You're bouncing all over town to get the things that you need. That may be lots of paperwork, even being re-traumatized, telling your story over and over again. And that's not including things like transportation logistics. Maybe you have your kids with you. Maybe you're injured and actively fleeing, or you have this 2-hour window where your abuser is away and you can go get what you need. So we are in the process of opening One Safe Place Macon. And One Safe Place Macon will be a physical building that is one door that our victims and their families need to walk through. And the agencies who serve those victims will be co-located and sharing that space together. And there will be centralized intake, centralized navigation support for the kids as well. So if mom is actively fleeing and bringing her kids with her, there'll be a wonderful trauma-informed playroom that they can play in while mom is getting services, and the kids will access services too. Right now, we have 16 agencies, including the DA's office and many others that are in this room, 16 agencies that are committed to having their staff work in this building. And then another 10 plus agencies that are committed that if their services are needed, they will come to this building. So a family could walk through this door and have the resources of over 25 agencies at their fingertips, but also have the support of a navigator and a caring team who can help them figure out what do you need now in crisis, short term, long term, and for whatever a sustainable future looks like for you. We're flipping the whole delivery model. We've been working on this for 2 years, and we're in the process of reviewing and looking at buildings right now with the hopes that we will be open in 2024. But we're really excited to be pioneering this in the state of Georgia and really believe that this is going to completely change the way that we serve our neighbors. So we're thrilled about it.
Thank you so much, Sarah. As we wrap up, I just want to say, let's change our conversation. Let's not continue to ask, why didn't she just leave? That's not the appropriate question. We've heard some of the barriers that victims of domestic violence face every day. So we want to be considerate of that. And I'll leave you with the idea that leaving is a process, not an event. Thank you for your time.
All right, next we're going to have a few words from District Attorney Anita Howard real quick. So DA Howard, if y'all will give her a round of applause. This is all here because of her.
All right, hello everyone. I hope you've enjoyed the meal. I see some more folks from my team in Peach County. Y'all just got here. Y'all go ahead and grab some food. If you want seconds, we've got plenty of food. You know, one thing about DA Howard, she is going to feed you, right? And we're not going to run out of food. So go ahead, get some more. I'll be back to provide closing remarks, but I wanted to speak for a moment about what we have next coming up, which is Anita's Light. And we're going to have Senior ADA Don Baskin come up. But many of you remember this case. It was a case that occurred with a student at Fort Valley State University. And I'm not going to take Dawn's thunder. I'm going to let her go through all of that. But I just want you to know that we did obtain a conviction in the case, and I'm sure Don will tell you all about that. But I knew that night after we got the conviction that there was more that had to be done, and that just wasn't enough. And I've been a prosecutor for over 18 and a half years. I've seen some pretty horrific things. I've experienced seeing families in tragedy. But there's certain moments throughout my 18 and a half year career that I won't ever forget. And that night is one of them. Because Mr. Gunn, Anita's father, after we got the verdict, we were trying to get him upstairs to our office. And he got on his knees and he began to scream Anita's name. And it sent chills through me and probably everybody that was there. And I said, this is a parent's worst nightmare. We send our children off to school to better themselves, and they are supposed to return. Okay? And so for me, there was more that had to be done. I also recognize that I'm in a unique situation here in Middle Georgia. We have 5 institutions of higher learning. We have, of course, Wesleyan. We're here today. The Fort Valley State University, Mercer University, Central Georgia Tech, and Middle Georgia State University. And we know that domestic violence is going on those campuses, okay? We're not gonna sit here and act like that's not happening. And so there's more outreach that needs to be done. You heard the panel talking about making sure that people know what resources are there. And this panel, they did an amazing job. If you don't remember anything else, they said so many wonderful things, but our moderator summed it up best, that, leaving is a process and it's not an event. And I think we've been looking at it all wrong. Why won't you just leave? And you heard Jamie say it takes about 7 times of leaving before it's final, right? It's a process. And so, I just want to thank this panel. Let's give them another round of applause. But we started the Domestic Violence Unit in January of 2023. And that unit has done a phenomenal job. And yes, we prosecute in that unit. You've heard about that. But we also focus on prevention. And so we have days like this, and we talk to the Citizens Academy that they have in Fort Valley and other initiatives where, and other community activities where we have our domestic violence unit present with literature. We've also recently received, within the last 30 days, a $385,000 grant to expand the domestic violence unit. And by the end of the year, we are hoping to get at least another $150,000. So I know they told you that we are serious about domestic violence. We're serious about the prosecution, but we're also serious about the prevention. And so I just wanted you to know why we formed that unit. And I want Mr. Gunn to know that I will never forget Anitra. And we will do everything to honor her. And now I'm going to have Senior ADA Don Baskin come up to tell some more of the story.
First off, I want to say I'm absolutely thrilled that the Peach County crew, as we lovingly call them, are here. I know that my fellow prosecutor, Neil Haverson, he and I tried this case, and we both lived it, and it still lives within both of us. I'm thrilled to see the sheriff here. I know he also lived it, and all of our support staff. They were in a murder trial, which ended up getting continued this morning, and so they're here, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have them. On February 14th, 2020, Mr. Christopher Gunn learned that his daughter, Anitra Gunn, was missing. She was a 22-year-old student at Fort Valley State University. Mr. Gunn had been in contact with the last person to see Anitra and was receiving some confusing and contradicting information. As a father, the next morning, he and several members of her family descended upon Fort Valley to look for Anitra and to make a formal missing persons complaint. 4 days later, on February 18th, 2022, in a remote wooded area just outside the Peach County line, in Crawford County, Anitra Gunn's body was discovered buried under brush and limbs. The next day, her former boyfriend, DeMarcus Little, was arrested. He was initially arrested for vandalizing her home only days before her disappearance and later charged with her murder. As the state prepped this case and the evidence began to develop, it became very clear that Anitra was a victim of domestic violence. The more we looked at the phone records, the photos of damage, incident reports, the clearer the picture became. At trial, the state used photos taken by law enforcement of the scene leading back to Anitra's body as a metaphor for the relationship between her and DeMarcus Little, and unfortunately, what was the inevitable end. We used text messages between DeMarcus Little and Anitra Gunn to establish and lay out this particular relationship, beginning in September of 2019, some 5 months before her murder. DeMarcus Little writes, "I'm gonna kill Anitra, bro." He writes to his brother, who is the person responding, who says, "Why?" And his response is, "She wanna break up with me over a joke." I think I'll use Jamila's language when I say she didn't take her seriously. In October, there was a text message from Anitra to DeMarcus where she says, "I don't care about the threats, the abuse. If I decide to leave you, that's just what it's going to be." That was one of the very many times that Anitra tried to leave. The path continued. Later in October, as she tried to move on, tried to see other people. Before you text another dude just because you're irritated, I suggest you leave, because my mercy has limits. This is a text message that he screenshotted to her where he is trying to pay somebody to kill the man that she went out with. The individual offers to shoot up his house for $200. Anitra writes back, this is DeMarcus writing, I mean that. I've got God's reach. That language always haunted us in this particular case. I've got God's reach, baby. Like I said, I'm sparing him right now, so you best be on your best behavior. This is DeMarcus speaking to his brother. His brother is advising him, well, just stay out of her phone, because he liked to get into her phone, check where she's been, who she's talked to, liked to do it when she didn't know that he was getting into her phone. And DeMarcus responds, LOL, chill, bruh. Gotta sneak up on her every now and then. And then he says, I already did it, meaning he had gotten into her phone. And his brother says, oh, hell, got her. And he says, LOL, it wasn't anything in there. And the brother, predicting what would happen in the future, said, LOL, good, she would have been choking by now. Anitra writes DeMarcus in November, no, we're definitely done. I'm about to be living in fear and doing things just to make you feel good. It's my life, and I'm gonna live it exactly how I choose to. We're done. That's the only answer you need. Anitra writes in January, almost exactly a month before she's murdered, you just came in my house last night without open invitation, touched me several times after me repeatedly asking you not to, forcefully took my keys away from me, and then you kept saying you can come into my house anytime you want to. Less than 3 weeks before her murder, you flattened my tires, D. That's not a coincidence, bruh. It wasn't flat when I got home yesterday. I did nothing wrong to you. "14 days before she's murdered, nah, because you threatened me. You told me straight up, if you do something else, together or not, I'll hurt you." And just as DeMarcus Little promised, he did hurt Anitra. He hit her. He pushed her. He threatened her. He threatened her friends. He threatened other young men who she tried to move on with. He threatened to kill himself and blame her. He manipulated her. He gaslighted her. He stole from her. He would buy things for her and then take them back when he was angry. He would call her and text her incessantly, sometimes up to 50 times a day. He slashed her tires on 2 separate occasions and smashed her windows with a brick. Anitra Gunn was a beautiful, intelligent, strong woman. And the world is a little grayer with her gone. Her father, Christopher Gunn, has vowed to fight on. And he is here as her champion. He is here to make sure that her name is never forgotten. He is here to make sure that her death might serve as a warning and help others get off that path before it's too late. It is my honor to introduce the father and champion of Anitra Gunn, Mr. Christopher Gunn.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, D.A. Howard, for inviting me to speak. This is the first time that I've spoken publicly about this since the trial. Domestic violence, it's real, and it doesn't discriminate. It happens whether we're old, we're young, we're black, we're white, we're brown. It doesn't care. I sent Anita off to Fort Valley. We love the city. We love the university. I sent her there to get an education, good education. I sent her there to grow as a young woman, have responsibility. I never forget when I brought her down to move her into the dorms her freshman year. I looked over at the football stadium that they have there, and I said, hey, in 4 years, I'm gonna be right there in that stadium when you get your degree. Never would I have imagined that I would have to come to Fort Valley to find her. And I definitely never could have thought that I would be burying her next to her mother. I wrote down just a couple of things that I could think of that if it could help anyone, any parent that are sending their kids to college or whatnot, just some things that you could do, some things that I did. But I could have also did a little more. Holding your kids accountable while they're in college. And when I say that, I mean holding them accountable of what you expect of them. You expect them to get a good education. You expect them to be on their best behavior. You enjoy college. Have fun. Talking to them once they're there, and not just about schoolwork. You want to be able to talk to them about what's going on in their life while they're there. Who are they talking to? Who their friends are? What'd you do today? I know you went to class, but how's everything else going? Just being able to talk to your kids and having that relationship with them just to let them know that, yeah, you're not home, but I'm always here, and I'm here for you. Because kids, of course, I'm sure we've all had this same type of mindset. Hey, once you get a certain age, hey, I'm grown. And a lot of times, as parents, we feel, hey, they moved on to college, hey, hallelujah, they out the house. But I will say, it's not a time to relax with your children. It's not. It's not a time to relax. Yeah, you could definitely ease up a little more. They're not going to want you to be going through their phone and that type of stuff, and that's understandable. But just being able to let them know that I care for you, I care about your well-being. I care about who you associate with. My daughter will often, when it was spring break or whatnot, Christmas break, she would have some girlfriends that maybe they really couldn't go home. So she would ask me, hey, Dad, is it all right if my girlfriends come home with me in spring Christmas break? I said, sure, I have no problem with that, bring them. I would love to meet who you're hanging with, who you're talking to. Something else that we had, and I think about it all the time, but I never got a chance to talk to her about this, but we actually had code words that we would speak about if something was wrong. Our code word was onions. And it was onions because I don't like onions, and she didn't like onions. So if I ever heard her say something to me in that sentence, I would have known something's not right. And last but not least, I would just say, love them to the utmost. If they get mad about you loving them as much as you do, they just got to get mad. I never, ever want anyone to experience what I've gone through. The pain is undescribable. You're not supposed to bury your children. Your children are supposed to bury you. Thank you so much.
Next up, we'll have a few words of encouragement from our Chief Magistrate Judge, Judge Pam White Colbert.
Good afternoon. I was an assistant district attorney for 30 years, and out of those 30 years, 20 years, I was the domestic unit. I handled hundreds of cases and dealt with hundreds of victims. And in doing that training, I learned what love is. And we've been talking about love today, but not the real love. Because domestic violence is about power and control, not love. And so my words of encouragement today are coming out of 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8. Love is patient and kind. It doesn't hurt you. Love does not envy or boast. It's there for you. It is not arrogant. It is not rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. Love believes, and love trusts, and love does not hurt. I call the name of Anitra Gunn because her light is still shining. I call the name of Jamila French because her parent and her sister's light is still standing. And for all other victims that I do not know to call, your light still shines. And I'm going to sing just a couple verses of this little ditty. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Amen. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Thank you so much for that, Judge. Last up, we will have District Attorney Anita Howard coming back to give us our closing remarks. Again, give it up for DA Howard for putting on such a great event. Thank you.
All right, thank you all so very, very much. I don't know where to start. This has been such a wonderful educational symposium. I want to first thank two people. Of course, Amber Cook and then Elle Copeland, wherever she is. Without these two, this would not have happened. You know, oftentimes my staff, I just kind of throw these ideas out, and yeah, they always make it happen. And I know I get a lot of credit for stuff, but I have an amazing staff, and they really are my extended family. And so all my staff that's here in the room, please stand. I would like to thank all again of the elected officials. I know you already stood. I know a few came in though after we did the acknowledgements. I saw Sheriff Deese come in and Sheriff Davis came in. And let me just say, we also have Sheriff Walker here. I'm thankful for everybody and the elected officials, but I want to say something. When I go to DA's meetings, you know, on the state level and then even on a national level, and they find out that I have 3 counties in my circuit, some of the questions I get was, oh, I know that's hard for you, dealing with that many, you know, police chiefs or sheriffs. And I just tell them, no, it's not hard. We talked about those numbers, but I want to give credit also to Sheriff Walker, Sheriff Deese, and Sheriff Davis. We've worked hard to cultivate not only relationships with each other, but with our staffs. And we would not be successful without law enforcement. We are a team, and I want to publicly thank them for their partnership and all that they do. Oftentimes, I know you all don't get a lot of credit. And I can share with you that heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? But we ask for these jobs, and you each are doing them very well, and I thank you for your partnership. And they show up for their DA, right? That's awesome, okay? And they show up consistently for their DA, and I appreciate it. I want to thank the Macon, Georgia chapter of the Lynx. If you are a member of the Lynx, will you please stand and be acknowledged at this time? I want to thank my sorors of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. If you are a soror, would you please stand at this time? And then my RISE ambassadors. If you are a RISE ambassador, I tell you, Soror Shirley, you just might as well keep standing. So, my RISE ambassadors. I want to thank my family, my husband, my mother, my bonus mom. I want to thank you all for being here, all of the participants, all of the attendees. But I want to give a special recognition. Today would not have been what it has been without Jamila French and without Mr. Christopher Gunn. So at this time, I would like for the both of you to come up, please. Y'all, they did an amazing job. Oftentimes people tell me, oh, you do a good job here, you do a good job there. And I tell people all the time, I don't really talk about myself. I think one of the hardest things to do is stand up in front of people and tell your story and talk about yourself. And that's what they did. And they did it not only to share their story, but so that others can learn from their tragedy. And I just want to thank them for doing that today. And we will help you all carry those. Okay, thank you so much. We'll get them to your car. Y'all know everything I do is kind of big, right? I don't think I realized how big those was gonna turn out, but whatever. That's just kind of who I am. So, and y'all love that about me, right? I would like to also thank this wonderful institution, Wesleyan College. I remember my good friend, Ken Blair, he asked me to come here to meet the new president, President Blight. And I knew in that first meeting that this was going to be a wonderful partnership with Wesleyan College. And we talked that day about domestic violence. And I talked about my vision of making sure we have partnerships with all of the higher institutions of learning in my circuit. And she was immediately on board. And I knew then that it was, going to be a awesome partnership. And so I want to thank Wesleyan College, President Blight, for just allowing us to have this event here. They graciously said yes as soon as we called. So we want to thank Wesleyan College. And then I need to thank Ken Blair again. I want to thank Ken Blair and Dr. Ansley Booker. All these beautiful decorations that you see, they did all of those. And so I want to thank them for doing that. They worked with us. Everybody was very flexible. So I want to thank Dr. Booker as well as Ken for the beautiful decor. So thank you all so much. And if you are sitting at a table, and I hope they gave me the right information. If not, just, tell me no. So if you are sitting at a table or you see one of the floral arrangements that's actually in the pumpkin, you all can take those with you if you would like. And you can, and also the flat ones here, but be very, very careful because my understanding, they're actually in a plate and a glass plate. So be very careful. But if you are sitting at one of the tables with the live floral arrangements, those are yours to take, okay? I think that is all of my thank yous. Team, did I miss anyone? Oh, yes, the caterer. Okay, well, they are from Wesleyan. So, yes, thank you so much. They were flexible with us. I appreciate it. And I just want to say that every time we have an event, you know, folks show up. I'm so sorry, Commissioner Wynn. I don't know if you were here when we originally said the elected officials, but Commissioner Wynn, she shows up. She shows up for her DA, and I appreciate that. But I just want to thank everybody again for being here. I see so many partners in the room, and we want to definitely reclaim the light for Jamila's mom, stepfather, and sister, and also for Anitra. And they will live on with us at the DA's office. We will not forget. This community will not forget. These sheriffs that you are sitting here that are so busy, they will not forget. We are not, law enforcement in my office, we're not going to let them forget. And so we're going to continue on reclaiming the light for them and in their honor. And God bless each and every one of you. Thank you all so much for being here today.